So, police night, my way of background about me, I was in Hong Kong 1979 when, just after Jimmy Carter and Deng Xiaoping normalized relations, UPI said, we need more young people out there. So we're going to tell old guy stories here, La Toad's stories. So I went out in January 1979. You were already in Hong Kong at that time.
I had been in Hong Kong for 4 years.
For 4 years. And Andy Nathan, where were you in 1979? Can't remember.
We were all there.
Columbia.
But you obviously, I mean, the three of us have had these 40 years of experience, and Russell is a fresh face. We have Andy Nathan from Columbia, Russell Xiao from the Global Taiwan Institute, and Richard Bernstein, who I knew in Beijing. He worked for Time there, and he went on to write many, many distinguished books, including The Coming Conflict with China, was 1997. So let's start with just setting the stage for where we think we are in U.S.-Chinese relations, because this has obviously dramatic bearing on Taiwan. As you see, this issue of The Economist is out. This kind of news media coverage is starting to China versus America, a dangerous rivalry. That clearly there's been a shift in the American and British media's tone of coverage. But I'll start with you, Richard. So we have tariffs, we have a trade war, maybe in everything that China sends to us. We have military incidents. We have arrests of Ministry of State Security officials in Brussels extradited to the United States for allegedly trying to steal GE secrets. We have a number of things happening across the board. What does it say to you about where we're headed in U.S.-Chinese relations?
I'm not sure exactly where we're headed. I'm having enough trouble figuring out how we got to where we are. I mean, you mentioned 1979 and Deng Xiaoping's trip, and just think of how different the atmosphere was then. You know, the sense of barriers falling, and the two countries that had been rivals and enemies and isolated from each other for such a long time suddenly were having a kind of love fest. I remember Deng Xiaoping, the ultimate moment of Deng Xiaoping's trip when he came to the United States was when he went to a rodeo in Houston. He was there to go to the Space Center, of course, but at night they had a good old-fashioned Texas barbecue and a rodeo. And he put on a 10-gallon hat, and he rode in a stagecoach, and all the photographers were there taking his picture. And for a number of years, the relationship was basically pretty good. That sense of discovery and the sense of a dangerous rivalry evaporating. And then what happened was that China became a powerful country. And contrary to the predictions that were generally made for it, I can remember 1980 or 81 in Beijing when I was there for Time magazine. The China Daily started, the English language newspaper, and it had been going on just for a few months or a few weeks maybe. And I remember somebody, since he's not here, to speak for himself or to say that I'm getting it all wrong, I won't mention his name, but he was a very well-known guy in the embassy in Beijing, not the ambassador, but high-ranking ambassador, assured me that this is the opening wedge of press freedom in China. This is going to be a new experience they're going to hire all these foreign journalists to be editors, and they're going to be trying to appeal to a foreign audience, and that's going to open up Chinese journalism to a new era. And it didn't. Maybe it promised to for a while, and China was a little bit kind of on a razor's edge about whether it would fall over on a more liberal democratic side, or whether it was going to fall back to really what is China's 3,000-year-old tradition of authoritarianism. And it fell on the side of authoritarianism. And to me, that's, and it has it's one of its chief interests in the world, and one of the things that puts it into conflict with the United States is to make the world safe for authoritarianism and for authoritarians. I mean, one of the things that Xi Jinping has done is make, in famous document number 9, make advocacy of the very values that we Americans most cherish practically criminal offenses.
They're trying to wipe out Western ideas.
Western influence.
Right.
Historical nihilism is a euphemism for writing the truth about history. They don't want that on sensitive topics. So, you know, so we, what's really emerged, I think, in many reasons, we talk about the strategic conflict, China's military buildup, the South China Sea, the possibility of a conflict over Taiwan, which I think is a very important issue, and I hope we talk about it. But to me, the crux of the matter is the ideological conflict. It sounds like ideas are not something that you fight over, but we're talking about ways of life. And I'm going on too long here, but let me just say one last thing.
So the punchline is, do you think that there now is a fundamental shift in perceptions, mutual perceptions occurring that could set the stage for the new Cold War? That's what we're hearing that phrase.
You know, it's not a shift in my perception. I mean, 20 years ago, I wrote the book, The Coming Conflict with China. So, I mean, I've sort of been anticipating this outcome for a long time. But I think, yes, for the public, there is a shift in the perception of China. It's now, you know, the Defense Department declares it to be the most important strategic rival of the United States, along with Russia. This wouldn't have happened. I don't know how many years ago, 10 years ago, or 12 years ago, or maybe even 5 years ago. It wouldn't have been the case. But yes, China has emerged as the greatest challenge to the United States. Now, is it really the greatest challenge? I mean, is the rise of China really threatening to the United States, and in what ways? That's a complicated question, and I'm not even sure that I have the answer to that, or, you know.
Maybe we'll come back to that.
Yeah.